It's just, I don't know.
Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and play the next clip. Make sure you pay attention, y'all, because I don't want y'all to miss something. So just only audio only. I will be dropping the actual source after this live stream. It'll be in the description. So just pay attention, you guys.
Is a commitment to a set of values without compromise. What are values? Values are things you value. That's all. Not complicated. For example, if you value your marriage vow, you will never commit adultery. So when a person commits adultery, they don't value their marriage nor their marriage vows. See, your values will protect you. Secondly, character is the dedication to a set of standards without wavering. What are your standards that you've set for your life? My standards produce my character. I will never violate my standards. You got to say that every day. I do not tell lies. That's a standard. I do not steal. That includes stealing time from your job. Telling people you are sick when you are not sick. This is a lack of character. You are a thief. I wonder why you're smiling. Character is so subtle. There's no excuse in life for breaking your standards. I hear people say sometimes, honesty is my best policy. Now, whenever you tell me that, I do what Joseph did. Honesty should never be your best policy. Never. Because best policy means I have second best, third best, fourth best, fifth best. I can't trust you. You have no character. A person of character would say, honesty is my only policy. Thirdly, character is self-imposed discipline for the sake of moral convictions. That means a person of character doesn't need the police. They police themselves. A person of character locks themselves up in the prison of their own convictions and they throw away the key.
I don't know about y'all, but that kind of hit home. And so I'd say we all not perfect, but when it comes down to like the smallest things, like stealing time, even you taking a longer lunch, like this is integrity. Like, what are you standing for? So let's go ahead and talk about this. It's actually getting a little bit deep. I've seen some people nodding their heads in the back. Let's talk.
One of the things that stuck out to me. So I do believe that like what he was saying in terms of like integrity develops your character, right? The more you practice those standards, it begins to develop your character and just becomes a part of who you are. But one of the other things that stood out is that I do think that integrity and honesty are a little different. I believe you can have honesty. You can be honest, but not be a person of integrity. But if you are a person of integrity, you'll be honest. So I think you can have one without the other, meaning like, so you can have some people that are honest, like honest in words, but are not showing integrity through their actions. So and an example of that could be something like, actually we kind of hear it in this YouTube space a lot of times, and it can go both ways, but the example that just popped into my head has to do with men who they say, oh, well, I'm honest about the fact that, you know, I'm sleeping around. Like I tell the truth about that. So then later on, nobody will come back to me and say that they didn't know. But yes, you're honest, but are you moving with integrity? And I think those two things are different, because morally, ethically, is that behavior that you should be doing. Even though you can do it, doesn't mean that you should. And I think that's what integrity is.
But mistakenly, you say that, but it may not be a part of their religion. Their religious beliefs allow them to have multiple partners like that.
Sleeping around people or being with people, like actually having wives. Are you talking about just sleeping with people? Yeah. I don't know a religion like that.
They don't even recognize marriage, so they don't even have wives. You have some people like that.
That's an example that I gave, but there are other examples in which you can be honest, but not necessarily show integrity. Like, I can be honest that, yeah, I go and I steal from Walmart. I'm honest about it, saying, oh, I'm a thief. I'm honest, but am I showing integrity? The answer will be no. So I think a lot of times we get those two things mixed up, thinking that because you're an honest person, then you have integrity. The thing is that your integrity has to match up. So a lot of times we're honest in our words, but may not necessarily be honest in our actions, or honest, with showing integrity with moral character. So that was just one example.
That was great, Mistaken.
Anybody else?
Yeah, motherfucker. That was great. That wasn't great. That was bullshit.
That was awesome. That was awesome. Because if we sat here and said, okay, she's moving the same way. If a woman goes out with you just because she's trying to get a meal or she's using you for your money, it's the same thing. She is not moving with integrity, period. So just because we talk about sex, how about switch it? When women do that to men, women manipulate men all the time. They're not being honest with them. Or they can be honest and say, hey, I'm not feeling you right now. But then he takes you out on a date and you're using this dude. Like, come on. It's still your move. See, that's wrong.
Like, I don't know about you guys, but I do want to
go ahead.
But I do want to hear from Hank, because again, all perspectives are respected, and I think he raised a great point. Like, what if you don't tie it back to a religion? Then how do you define what integrity looks like then? Or is it still considered like integrity? Are you still going against the grain, like Mistaken talked about? So that's kind of opening it up a little bit. You want to kind of elaborate on that, Hank? So people,
yeah, because 90% of y'all women has no integrity then. None at all. Ain't a bit of more integrity in your ass. Because most of them do that bullshit. But let me say this: if an individual has multiple relationships and he's honest and upfront about them, what about him doesn't have integrity? We in the same boat. We all know this is what we are. This is what I do. This is what I have. So that shows lack of integrity, because he was straight up honest. He told him, we're going to come together. She's over there. She's not going to be interference. You know how to see her. She won't be in your way. She won't affect none of the income that comes in the home. But it's just something, when I'm in the mood, I need to go over and slide through and get them cheeks. What's the lack of integrity?
I didn't know if he was finished, but I definitely got a response.
All right, before you finish?
No, she go. Balance, go ahead. I mean, Mistake won't come back at me. That's cool. I can handle it.
I actually agree with you, Hank, because I keep saying on these panels that integrity and morality is subjective, which means it means different things to different people. You have to stop trying to put your morality on everybody else. Everybody does not have to believe what you believe. You're not God to tell somebody what's right and wrong. If to them that's okay and that's their belief system, that could be their belief system. And I say all the time, get with people that have the same what you believe. Get with people that believe what you believe. Stop trying to change people in their thought process. Who's to tell Hank that he's wrong? I'm not his God or his judge. He's not incorrect if that's his belief system. So I think what's wrong is that people always try to put their morality on everybody else. That's not what you should do. Nobody taught you to do that, even if you want to go off the Bible. But go ahead.
But does it make it wrong? You know what I mean? Like, if we... No, that's serious. That's a serious.
I agree, because we can say that about stealing. We can say that about killing. We can say that about so many other things. Like, where's the point that it stops? Like,
yeah.
Aren't you in Atlanta?
Unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay. So the capital of the community. Mm-hmm. So how do you feel about that? Do they lack integrity?
Well, Hank, this is the thing.
That's all I need to hear. If you say that, Mistaken, how do you feel?
That's what I'm about to say. I do somewhat agree with what Balance is saying in regards
to politicians. Mistaken.
No. I agree with what she's saying in terms of some people have a different standard, right? Or different way of living. It can be based on their culture, things like that. It doesn't necessarily have to be based on religion, right? It can be a cultural thing. But and I guess there are subcultures, because I think with subcultures, that's creating a different culture within the larger group because there's some aspects that you don't agree with. My thing is that if you're looking at it from a religious standpoint or a cultural standpoint, and when you measure up your actions with the overall aspect of what that culture or religious group say is right or wrong, if you're moving against that direction, then I don't think that you're moving with integrity in regards to that cultural group. And I know I gave that example as, just sleeping around, but just from my understanding and I don't know everything. I don't know about every culture. I don't know about every religion, but the ones that I do know about, that is not something that is in alignment with culture or religion. Now, polygamy, yes, but part of the polygamy aspect is that you're supposed to be married to these multiple women. And men are not moving in that direction. They're just having sex with multiple women. So that's where I say, like, the difference is you have to kind of align it with the larger group of what those basic standards are, because you have to have a baseline in order to determine what's right or wrong.
Right. So we're saying that integrity isn't a one size fit all. Everybody have their own perspective on, what they believe is morally or whatever. You know what I mean? So it's like, we can't tell anybody anything then, because she may believe that she can go out and wear a thong out in public. And I'm over here saying, well, put some clothes on. You know what I mean? So it's like, so we're saying that integrity isn't a one size fit all. It varies.
So that's why I said it has to be a baseline in which everybody is operating from. It has to be, because like even in having conversations now, if we defined integrity and everybody defined integrity very different, then we can't really understand the conversation, because we're looking from a whole bunch of different perspectives where we don't even have a baseline of agreement to. So I do think that there has to be an established baseline of what we say integrity is, and then move from that direction.
This is why I think a lot of people aren't living in reality, because in reality, there is no baseline. And even if there was one, who would be the one to make it? Not you guys. So I think it doesn't make sense to say that, to be honest. I mean, it sounds good in theory. It sounds good in a perfect world, but that's not the world we live in. And maybe we could say it should be like that, but we have to speak in reality in the world we live in today. In the world we live in today, it's what Hank said. This is the reality. Obviously, everybody doesn't think the same and believe the same and have the same faith or religion or morality. They do not. So for us to sit up here and say it should be that way, we could say that, but that's not how we're living.
And that's why we keep getting the results that we're getting, because of that. The way it used to be, when people had morals, it was going a little better. But now, because there are no morals, nobody cares. Everybody's out here doing what they want to do. They don't care who they hurt in the process. They just do what they want to do, and it's just going down the drain.
And if you look at majority of, and I'm gonna just say major religions, because of course, again, like I say, I don't know everybody's religion, but even in those major religions, like when you like Buddhism, Christianity, there's a whole bunch of different levels in Christianities in terms of which sect you go to, being a Muslim, all of those things. There is a thread of commonality in terms of baseline in the way that you treat people, like that golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. There's a moral thread, a base, and that's what I'm saying. You have to have a baseline in which everybody is able to operate from. And even in having different religions, is that thread line, is that baseline that everybody's operating from.
But everybody never operates from the same baseline. The prisons are full with people that do not believe what you just said at all. not even 1% of what you said. So that's what I mean. It sounds good in theory, but that's not people's reality. And I think the problem is we're speaking from this utopia world, and we want it to be that way, but that's not how it is. So it just sounds good. It sounds like a good conversation, but what I think works in this current reality is when I talk to young girls, I actually coach young girls, and I don't tell them, hey, don't be like Cardi B, because they don't want to hear that. That's not what works. What I do say is these are the pros and cons of doing this and going this direction. These are the pros and cons of doing this and going this direction. And everybody ultimately is going to make their own decision, period. And that's what this life is about, making your own decisions. Nobody's going to make them for you. But I can help and guide somebody by telling them the pros and cons of every outcome of the decisions that they choose for their life. Because in this reality, telling somebody, hey, that's wrong, they're just going to think you're judgmental and not listen to you anyway. We see that all the time. If you think about if you think about preachers' kids, right? A lot of times, you know what happens, like they want to rebel. They're like, I don't want to be in this religion at all. They become the biggest promiscuous women and men that we know. So I mean, it sounds good in theory. I'm not telling you, if you want to tell people this is the wrong and right way to live, tell me the results you get. But what I see works best with when I coach young girls, which a lot of people don't, is say, hey, you could do that if you want, but this is the outcome. This is what you're going to have if you go that direction. Do you really want this outcome? And let them make the decision for themselves.
Let me ask you this question. You brought up the idea of people in prison because they was moving from a different, level. But isn't that within itself that baseline? Because the baseline would be whatever they did to break the law to end them up in prison. So that baseline is the general understanding of this is what's going to be acceptable in this society. And you have to move accordingly. If you don't, then these are the negative consequences of that. So that baseline is established in terms of what is right and wrong when we're, talking about the prison system. So that is the baseline in which everybody is supposed to be operating from. So if a person makes an individualized decision to say, well, no, I don't want that to be my baseline, I'm going to do something else, then they end up with the consequences and the results of that, of going against what the established baseline is.
You're talking about laws. You're talking about the laws.
Well, that's because you said prison. So
yeah. And I'm not debating with you on that. We do have laws, and a lot of people break the laws. We see that too. But I'm talking about if somebody wants to live their life having 5 kids by 10 women, whatever. If that's the baseline of how they want to live, that's not a law. It's not illegal to live that way. You could do that if you want. It's not illegal to get drunk every night and kill your liver. I mean, they could do that if they want. So it's all about if they know the pros and cons and the outcome of doing these decisions to see if they want to continue on that path. For example, even me in high school, I was somebody that was like telling my friends that McDonald's was poison in high school. So they didn't want to hear that. Like, I was very odd in that sense. But I will say that even though that's how I was, people would say it doesn't take all that. It doesn't take all that. That's their opinion of me. It doesn't take all of that to be healthy. Okay, but then we could see the results 10 years later or 20 years later, and we could be like, you know what, maybe she has some good ideas. So I'm all about telling people the pros and cons, but I'm not going to tell somebody they're wrong for eating McDonald's. It's not against the law if they want to eat that, but I wouldn't eat that poison. That's just how I see it.
Yeah. You're on mute, JR.
So one of the things that, I echo everybody's sentiment, it was really good. One of the things I would say is in this postmodern society, or what I like to call this postmodern society, we no longer have one single source of truth. Truth is relative. There's your truth, my truth, right? We've moved away from center ground. And in doing that, we've allotted more freedom. People have more freedom today, so they feel less inclined to align themselves in a singular source of truth, right? And I ask people, not only in the chat and in the panel, how do you hold yourself grounded with integrity? How do you check in with yourself, right? Because we set these boundaries, we set these rules, and we set our moral standard and our moral compass, but how do we check in with ourselves? You know, do you pray? Do you meditate? Do you go to counseling? Do you speak to certain men within your group or sisters in your circle, right? How do you hold yourself accountable? How do you check in with yourself so you don't have a moment of weakness or temptation, right? Because, you know, none of us up here are perfect, just like JR had alluded to earlier. And sort of, how do we as a society, or how do we as a community check in constantly with ourselves to make sure that we are holding ourselves to the principles and values that we say that we adhere to?